Wolfe Creek traditionally ran right along the toe of the East Dam. As part of the mine plan, East Dam was approved to be raised to a certain elevation, and as it would rise, the toe was going to encroach onto Wolfe Creek. Wolfe Creek had to be realigned both so it didn't get encroached on and also for safety and stability. The mine had to realign approximately 3 kilometers of Upper Wolfe Creek, and about 900 meters of that creek was fish bearing. There was this little isolated population of rainbow trout. Because of the residual impacts of losing that fish habitat by realigning the creek, we had to develop an offsetting plan as part of the environmental approvals for the project.
Even though the mine was permitted, they needed an authorization for moving the creek, and it included a mine review committee, which included First Nations, USIB, LSIB, ONA, as well as all of the regulators, BC government and the FHOP. There was excellent engagement between Copper Mountain Mine and USIB, LSIB and ONA, meeting with elders and knowledge holders from all the bands. They were down here looking at the land with our partners.
We were envisioning the concept of the FHOP, which stands for Fish Habitat Offsetting Plan. We engaged quite a bit with the local communities. We listened and we heard feedback, and they had many good suggestions, many good ideas, and just explaining the history through their knowledge of the land and Wolfe Creek, we were able to modify our design to, I think, improve it greatly.
One of the things I really did enjoy with this project was working hand in hand with First Nations and hearing the input from the community. There were so many great ideas, so many things that Tim was able to put into the design that I think, you know, we can all be proud of. First Nations right through Copper Mountain. My role at the time of construction was a project supervisor. My role was to see that the design was adhered to and to ensure the proper operation of the equipment in environmentally sensitive areas. When we were building it, I talked to my team and I said, you guys, what we're building here is something that we want to be proud of, so we really need to take care and build something incredible, and I think we did that.
Part of the reason why we selected this location for the FHOP was it was far enough away from the mine that it was protected from any future development through future mine planning. Also, it's on land that's owned by the mine, so we know it's going to receive long-term protection. The FHOP was constructed in 2021. The construction staff from the mine were really diligent about making sure everything was surveyed. Each riffle crest was the right height, each pool depth was the right height, because all these are critical to how the function of the meandering riffle run pools will function to provide those different habitat features for rainbow trout. So what we did is we built all of the new habitat offline, so in the dry we didn't touch any of existing Wolfe Creek, and then once all the ponds and the riffles and the new channels were constructed, we tied the creek in at the last stage of the project. And what we did with portions of Wolfe Creek, we kept those old channels to serve as flood channels, so anything above a certain flow will go down the old channels to protect the new channels from any kind of erosion. We understand Hatfield Consultants' Wolfe Creek pretty well through the mine's Environmental Effects Monitoring Program, EEM for short. We've been studying the fish populations in Upper Wolfe Creek for over 10 years now. So we have a good idea of where the fish are, how they're doing, what habitats they're using, and we also know what's limiting those fish populations. So what we wanted to do with the FHOP was add more habitat that's limiting, so things like overwintering ponds, large summer rearing ponds, and spawning habitat, in particularly for specific life stages of rainbow trout, which is our key species in this portion of the creek.
Effectiveness monitoring is essentially where we find out how well the FHOP is doing year over year for a decade post-construction. We're comparing it to a baseline that we get from another creek not that far away. So we've got our reference creek, we've got our FHOP, and we have a whole variety of metrics that we're testing, trying to determine whether the fish productivity is as high or higher than our reference site. We're minnow trapping, we're electro fishing, sometimes we get to angle. All of that essentially to demonstrate that yes, this new habitat that we've constructed is not only as good, potentially better than the habitat that preceded it, that we replaced. It was really exciting to go back after construction in year one and find that just about immediately we had higher fish productivity than our reference, than our baseline. So we're going back year after year and targeting not just the fish species themselves, but also the food they eat. So we're looking at benthic invertebrates, and what we're seeing is great productivity, but also as the years have gone by, seeing instead of large numbers of the same species, we're seeing greater and greater diversity each year. So we're seeing larger numbers of more species, which is a really good indication that our habitat, the FHOP, is even over this limited period starting to mature and starting to better mirror habitat that naturally occurs in the same vicinity.
For the FHOP project, I, with my colleagues, made a vegetation management plan, which was a plan on how to restore or create vegetation around all of that fish habitat. What we did was separate it into 3 bands for planning purposes. So one below top of bank, areas that'll get wet, then just above top of bank where it's getting a little bit drier, still moisture, that transition, and then upland. This was all to meet Department of Fishery and Ocean requirements and based on what's found in the area and what's going to grow there. In the plan, we included what species to plant, their densities for planting, some work around what form those plants will be, like the size of pots, whether they're stakes or so on. I worked really closely with the crew that did the planting, including the staking with the willows and the dogwood. And then we did some adaptation after monitoring to see what wasn't working and what needed some help. Big challenge is the grasses down there. They're competitive. So getting creative with that was something that was part of the plan. Putting down cardboard was one way of doing it around the plants to create a barrier for that grass so it wouldn't compete with what we want there. And then the cows. The cows come and hang around and loiter in the water. And it took some convincing, but the rancher agreed that offsite watering, or agreed to do offsite watering, and I think that's helped right now. We'll continue to go back and see what's working and what isn't. And what was interesting for me was bringing together all the different people, a rancher, mine operator, fisheries folks, and then us on the veg. It's always fun when you can bring a lot of different expertise into one place and then come up with solutions. And it's a really exciting project because there's great habitat there. There's so much more diversity with the plants coming in, that structural diversity, and it's just going to benefit everything in their surrounding area.
Seeing how quickly the ecosystem responded to having a chance to expand itself and seeing the fish spawning the young of year, seeing the overwintering, the rearing, how quickly it's stabilized and developed has been extremely rewarding.
The FHOP, it's in a little bit of a out-of-the-way place and it's beautiful. Every once in a while on my way home, I'll make a little side trip down to the FHOP just to have a look at what's happening, see the progress, see the fish, see the osprey and the herons. I'm a big advocate for the project and so when their senior management comes to visit, I make sure they come down to see the good work that's been done. I'm really proud of this project.